How's it going today, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and we're back in the world of No Rest for the Wicked. So recently I noticed a lot of players are starting to get to the end game, and until the next major update, I want to go over some of the things that you should be doing and aim for as you're preparing for that next major update, which can introduce a lot of new cool content. This video is going to give you a little bit of direction on what you need to do, as well as even help you with a few mistakes I see a lot of players making. With that said, let's begin. Now, before we even can talk about what you need to do in the end game, there is one issue that I need to address immediately, and it's a big mistake a lot of players are making right now, and that is selling a very vital resource called Fallen Embers. These Fallen Embers are essentially your mapping system if you ever played a game like Path of Exile, and this is your in-game resource that helps you get into the thing that is the end game, which is the Serum Crucible. I know that this thing fetch a decent amount of silver, and I know in the early game a lot of players are going to want this in order to, get their silver and get their gold up so they can buy things. It is very important to not sell this resource. It is objectively one of the most important resources in the entire game, and it's really hard to come by, and I haven't even seen a vendor that can sell it or anything, so you really need to save this. In my current playtime, I have found maybe 100, and I play an abnormal amount. So, that's a really big indicator of how scarce these are and how much you really shouldn't be selling these. If you have sold these and you're in an early game or mid game, it's not that big of a deal because one of the in-game systems is essentially farming for these as well as other resources. So you're not completely done, but just make sure that you're not selling anymore from here on out. The next thing we need to address is if you're looking for in-game farming, there's a very good chance that you completed all the bosses in the game. As long as you fought the boss that you see on screen now, and there's a very good chance that you have unlocked the Serum Crucible, which is the primary in-game, which we're going to get to in a second. But this is the soft requirement that you need to actually go into there. I don't think that you should immediately go into the Serum Crucible. I think there's a little bit of prep time you need to do. But yeah, that is the soft requirement. Now, I always like to bring up Path of Exile and Diablo when it comes to explaining a lot of the system than No Rest for the Wicked, and that's because this game draws a lot of inspiration from those kind of games. The important thing to understand is whenever you're about to do the Serum Crucible, you need to prepare like you have to prepare in those games. And what I mean by prepare, I mean you need to have efficient food, and most importantly, you need a reasonable starting set of armor to pretty much go in there, unless you're one of the best players and you can dodge every single attack and hit really well. I don't know if that's going to be the average player, but if you can just go straight into the Serum Crucible and skip this step, but you're going to need to do this for probably most players, including myself. So the first thing that's very important is getting to level 21. Level 21 is very important because it gives you access to tier 3 armors. Tier 3 armors is going to have the best base stats, usually in the form of armor, which is going to be a really high value. So in my opinion, you definitely should be trying to hit level 21. Again, you don't need to, but that is going to be ideal because you're going to be enchanting on your gear. Something that gives you some type of heal sustain will work really well. Regeneration is ideal, some type of blocking on hit or hitting damage or anything like that. Anything that gives you some form of HP heal or even focus regeneration, because you can use runes like the heal aura heal, that can work really well for this. But ultimately you need some form of sustain in your build, and you need to be somewhat upgraded on your weapons. I would have, again, a pretty upgraded weapon at the very least so that you can actually deal damage, because when you go into the Serum Crucible, these mobs are very, very strong. Now, leading into the Serum Crucible, the last thing you need to do is farm the map. One of the in-game systems that you're going to be taking advantage of is the Alive mode. You should have ran into this plenty of times if you're in the in-game farming for the in-game build and doing in-game content. This is where a lot of mobs replace the world and start giving better drops. What you're going to pretty much do leading into the Serum Crucible is you're going to be going around the map and pretty much clearing everything that you cleared in the past, except for the bosses, obviously, because they're dead. On top of this, while you're doing that, I would highly recommend that you pick up all items that give you some form of consumables, as well as upgrading materials, because you're going to need it. When you're going into the Serum Crucible, I would highly recommend you have at least 40 heals, as well as some type of upgrade food if you're prone to getting hit like I am, so that you can have this and make it a better time, so you're not just having to leave, because those embers, again, are very scarce to come by. You don't want to waste them, because every time you die, it consumes a whole entire one and you don't get it back. So very important to be prepared. Once you're level 21, ideally, you have all the food that you need, and you have a pretty decent set of armor that has some upgrades, and your main weapon having the bulk of your upgrades. that's when I would say you can go into the Serum Crucible. Again, don't overdo it because you may or may not be as strong. You may need to get more gear, whatever the case is, but you're going to need to be careful and calculate it because the Serum Crucible is going to offer you something significantly better than anything you can get in the open world. The first thing is going to be XP. The Serum Crucible will get you a ton of XP because you're going to be facing some pretty strong mobs, and it's kind of like a gauntlet where you're just constantly fighting enemies, and these are tough enemies you probably haven't seen in the open world, like these really strong bulky knights you probably see on screen now that drops really awesome gear. And that's the other thing about the Serum Crucible. The Serum Crucible will drop you really powerful gear. I feel like whenever I'm in here, it will usually drops a lot of gear from almost any enemy I fight. But right now I'm farming a heavy armor set, and probably from seeing some of the clips, there's a lot of armor being dropped, and this is like armor I haven't seen in any other parts of the game. So it's very important to be in here just getting that armor and preparing. Finally, completing the Serum Crucible is going to give you a lot of resources over the course of entirely completing it, and then you'll have option of possibly getting some Ichor, which could be useful because you're going to be facing some bosses. I'm not going to show the boss because I don't want to spoil it, but there are a lot of different mobs, a lot of different varieties, and so much gear that you're going to have so much that you can actually prepare for the next update or the next major thing coming to the game. Inside your home, I would highly recommend having quite a few boxes so that it's pretty good to go, so you can start storing gear. I would pick up all the common gear and start like stockpiling it, and then once you have all the gold and silver that you have, because you're going to need a lot of silver for this, and that's kind of why the open world farming is actually valuable too. You want to have some silver so you can start enchanting and like really refining your build. Anyway, that is pretty much all you need to know about the end game of No Rest for the Wicked. It's a pretty brief guide, but it should pretty much touch on everything that any player who's starting to transition into the end game really need to know. If any of you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or even some corrections, feel free to leave them down in the comments, as I'm gonna be here and answer every question that I can and respond to every comment that I can, and just try to help players out with their builds or anything, whatever the case is. If this video helped you out too, guys, do consider leaving me a like, because that really helps get this video out to other gaming fans who like this type of content, and possibly even subscribe to stay up to date on all things No Rest for the Wicked, as well as many other ARPGs. With that said, my name's thesaga, this is Fervor Gaming, and I really thank you guys for being here.